So now that we have taken the refuges together, we have entered the noble silence for our time here. These refuges give us a place of safety for our practice. Another tool for practice are the 5 precepts, which we will reflect on now. The 5 precepts serve us as a guide for ethical conduct and are part of the Eightfold Path, which some of you may be familiar with. The 5 precepts relate directly to wise action, wise speech, and wise livelihood. The overarching theme is one of non-harming, and it's really universal in nature. So on the back of your handout, you'll find printed the 5 traditional precepts, as well as the modified version that we'll be using tonight and during our retreat. So the traditional precepts are to refrain from taking life, from taking what is not given, from sexual misconduct, from false speech, and from the use of intoxicants. So traditionally, precepts are stated in the negative in terms of what we should not do. For our practice on retreat, we will practice in the positive, what we should do. And doing so creates some momentum as we find ways to actively live the intention behind the precept. So we understand the precepts not as a set of rules to be followed, but rather as seeds of inquiry and a guide to act with compassion, generosity, and wisdom. So acknowledging our interconnectedness, we understand that the precepts have a twofold benefit. They create a safe space for our own individual practice by nourishing our wholesome mind states. And they also create a space of safety for our Sangha, this group that has gathered here. And we support each other's practice by practicing these precepts. When we nourish these wholesome mind states, such as compassion, wisdom, and generosity, we're stabilizing that practice. So looking at this modified version of the precepts, we can see what our practice would look like. The first precept is changing from not taking life to protecting life. This means protecting the life of all sentient beings. So on retreat, what does this look like? We might walk more mindfully and note the ant trails as we walk and avoid to step on them. Indoors, we may notice insects, loud ones or quiet ones, scary ones or big ones. Noticing them, and we have bug relocator kits, so we can mindfully move our little friends to the outdoors. We can also appreciate the lovely vegetarian meals that are prepared for us here. We might even, as we're out walking, observe a bird or a honeybee or a lizard or maybe even a tick. And we can certainly appreciate our pollinator friends and our lovely bird friends, but we may find the opportunity to work with appreciating the tick or the unpleasant critters in our midst, and just recognizing that they have a place in this space also. And normally our habit energy, of course, may be to avoid those things. But the invitation is, in working with this precept, is to reflect on the interconnectedness of life. And so while I don't want the tick to remain on my body, I may take a moment to notice him before I mindfully remove him. And compassion arises with that understanding and practicing of this precept to protect life. So the second precept is to be generous. Practicing generosity is a full practice in and of itself and a helpful one. And I just realized I forgot to put my mic on. Sorry, Kevin. There's a generosity in wearing a microphone so the people in the back can hear. And I apologize to those of you who couldn't hear the first precept, protecting life. So practicing generosity can be an antidote for clinging or wanting. And it may help us cultivate an awareness of impermanence. Outwardly, this may mean leaving the last cookie for the next person in line in the buffet. Or when we gather for our yoga practice and two people are walking towards the same spot, generosity may be offering the spot that you wanted to someone else. Inwardly, there's also a generosity in offering ourselves loving kindness and grace when we may experience a difficult time here. The third precept is to protect the sexuality of ourselves and others. While this seems unlikely to happen on a short retreat when many of us know each other, it's worth mentioning that sometimes on retreat, a person may become caught up in focusing some type of attention or lust on another person. And so making sure we're protecting our own and each other's practice, should these fantasizing thoughts arise, the instruction is to let them be and return to an object of focus, or perhaps to reflect on the source of the clinging. And while we cannot control where the thoughts go, we may choose how to respond and work with those thoughts. The fourth precept is to take care of our speech. And in our practice here, this really means practicing noble silence. And while many of you are familiar with this practice, for some of you it's new. So I'll say a few words about it. When we maintain silence on retreat, it's about creating an inward focus of our attention. So this means silence in all of our settings, in this hall, in the dining room, on the trails, in our dorm rooms. Throughout our time on this space, we'll be maintaining the silence. The exception is in an emergency. Thank you, Jillian, for posting our emergency protocols. And in our practice meetings. So you will each have the opportunity to participate in a practice meeting where you will take a break from the noble silence. Part of noble silence is respecting that inward practice. So when passing one another in the halls, in the dining room, on the trails, it is really skillful means to keep the eyes lowered and avoid even nonverbal cues, such as gestures. And really engaging with our fellow retreatants in any way, verbal or nonverbal, avoiding that engagement because it can really bring them out of their practice. So on working meditations or in meals, we may consider how to minimize even gestures to allow space for our own practice and for others to practice. The fifth precept is to be clear of intoxicants. So we were all instructed to leave any intoxicants, smokable, chewable, viewable, or otherwise, at home, or if not, in a sealed suitcase. So we're putting aside those things for this weekend to promote wise thinking. This precept supports our wise action, concentration, and wise effort. Without a clear mind, our judgment may be impaired, which may lead to unwise action. It's worth noting that the word intoxicant is often only thought about as substances. But for the sake of our practice, we may consider also media and reading and electronic use. When we consume any of these on our retreat, it may distract our attention from that internal practice that we are cultivating. I'm reminded that there is a box that is available for your cell phones, and I think the invitation was put your cell phone in before this session, but if you need to add your cell phone, let me know. Subtly. So let us use then these precepts over the next few days to walk the path of wise action and wise speech, keeping in mind the benefit to our own Dharma training and our interconnectedness, practicing to enrich and protect our practice and that of our Sangha. So I will now ring the bell and I will speak the precept out loud, allowing us time to reflect together for the duration of the bell. And we'll reflect in silence together on each one. Remembering how deeply our lives intertwine, for the sake of training, I undertake the precept to protect life. Remembering how deeply our lives intertwine, for the sake of training, I undertake the precept to be generous. Remembering how deeply our lives intertwine, for the sake of training, I undertake the precept to protect the sexuality of myself and others. Remembering how deeply our lives intertwine, for the sake of training, I undertake the precept to care for my speech. Remembering how deeply our lives intertwine, For the sake of training, I undertake the precept to be free of intoxicants for a clear mind and heart. May the precepts be a support and a guide as we explore the door to impermanence with equanimity.
Thank you, Jen. That was beautiful. I'm wondering if somebody can help me with the lighting. Somehow it got lighter than it was at